2018. We see a crowd cheering as we see Rob steps out onto a stage as he says, Thank you all for coming out tonight. We have a few new songs for you tonight and a bunch of old stuff as well. This song is about the time you spend with your loved ones and the things that you would do to protect them. It's called Limits and Trigger Finger. Now, we open with a bloody chain on the floor as we see Scott laying there dead, as we see Urban and Nancy walk in, as Nancy runs up to her dead son, as she cries and says, "Where is she?" Urban looks shocked and devastated and says, "She got out. I know she did." Nancy says, "Find her." Urban says, "If it's the last thing I do, I will." We see Urban put his skull mask on as we see they flee with 10 other men to track down and find Jade. We see Jade running through the woods as we see she's been running for a while as she backs up against a tree as she hears people following her. She peeks out to see it's the Skull Hunters as she then knows they're trying to bring her back. And she looks scared because she's escaped from them once before. As she then runs as fast as she can, she then runs for a while as she sees an old stadium in the distance, as she runs in trying to hide. We see Rob, Jade, and the two Wests are standing in the center of the stadium with their weapons out as Jade says, "We gotta go." The man says, "Where?" "We got them right here. They're locked in with us, so let's bust some heads in." As they see all the men run towards them with weapons, as we see Rob takes his sword and starts killing one after another, as we see blood spills all over the grass, as the woman fires her nail gun, killing several of them coming at them from behind. She then clears a path and says, "This way, come on." They run and lock themselves into the women's changing room. As we see, there are two deadheads inside. As they walk out, as we see the woman has no shirt on, and the other one is a man, and he has no pants on. As Rob says, "Well, the world went to shit, yet suddenly people never stop getting freaky, huh?" Jade says, "Alright guys, what's the plan? Because I am not going back there to be their Sunday dinner." They all look scared as we then hear a huge explosion from outside as we cut to several Skull Hunters getting blown to pieces, as we see a few men up on the top firing a handmade explosive at them, as Urban sees this and the guy next to him blows up right in front of him as he says, "Retreat! Retreat!" He and 3 other men run as 2 of them get shot with bow and arrows, but Urban and 1 other guy barely get away with their lives. We see the stadium is covered in smoke as we see a man and woman as she's saying, "I don't see them, do you?" The man says, "I saw them running, although I'm not sure where." They search around as Rob, Jade, and the 2 Wests come out into the smoke as we see these 2 are walking through. As we see the 2 Wests, she says, "Oh my God. Oh my God." They hug and she says, "Thank God we found you." As Rob and Jade see all 4 of them look happy to see each other, as Rob says, "Well, thanks for saving our asses. Now, who the hell are you?" We see Urban walking through the woods as he's badly hurt. We see the other Skull Hunter says, "They have more numbers than we thought, and gathering up all them is going to take a lot more than just us." Urban looks at him and says, No, we're not. We're not telling him." The Skull Hunter looks at him with a look of fear on his face and says, "It's time for Ragnar to know about this." We see Nancy and her other son and daughter standing over Scott's dead body in a bag as we hear, "They're back!" We see Urban and his man walk in covered in blood as Nancy runs up to them and says, "What the hell happened?" Urban says, "There's more of them than we thought. We got ambushed out there. Nancy, this is way bigger than we fucking thought. There's no way we can stop them on our own. Nancy says, well, maybe we should reach out to Ragnar. Urban says, oh, well, it's your fucking lucky day, because that's exactly what Cody's doing. Cody says, look, they ambushed us out there. Living like this, with your son dead, we're gonna need everyone we can get. Back with Rob's group. We see Rob and the rest walking on a trail, as we see some are in a horse and wagon, as we see the two from the West family and the other two new people are all riding in the back, as Rob and Jade are walking out front. As Jade sees a deadhead and it's just half a body crawling on the ground, and she says, I got it. Rob sees her kill it and he says, you're doing that shit all by yourself now. You're good. You really didn't need me at all. Jade says, I always need you, Dad. Thanks for saving me back there. Rob says, I wouldn't have stopped. I hope you know that. You've been my purpose for many years. Hell, without you, I'm just a creepy old man in the woods eating snakes and squirrels. Jade chuckles as they keep walking. We see the four others as the blonde woman says, Holly, what did they do to you? Holly says, me, Morgan, and our crew were out there on a hunt while those psychopaths ambushed us. They killed Pete. Hell, they almost killed all of us. Morgan says, we barely survived that night. The woman says, we barely survived too. I'm just glad you're both okay. Holly says, you can stay with us for the time being till these psychopaths are dealt with. The woman says, we should get back home. The guy says, I can't leave my mother not knowing about this. Holly looks at them and says, Ryder, Mara, no offense, but you both look like shit and very roughed up. I know the deal that we struck with your mother to keep to ourselves, but let me help you this time. As Mara says, okay, thanks. Ryder says, it's much appreciated. We see them approaching a shore as they stop there, as Rob says, so Holly, Morgan, when are y'all gonna tell me where the hell this place of yours is anyway? Morgan says, it's just a little further. Rob says, you know, I'm learning something about this West family, I must say. Mara says, what? Rob says, you all keep a lot of secrets around here. He sees a few deadheads as Mara says, get everything in the boat. Me and Rob will take care of them. As we see the sun going down, as we see Jade, Holly, Ryder, and Morgan getting on this boat, as they get the horses on board, and as they're doing that, we see Rob and Mara killing several deadheads in front of them. Rob sees one of them has crabs on their face, as Rob looks horrified, as Mara kills it, as he says, what the fuck was that? Mara says, that was gross as shit, I can't lie. Ugh, come on, let's go. As they all get in this big boat and sail off to go to Holly and Morgan's home. Back at Blackberry Ranch, we see Urban and Nancy sitting by a campfire, as Urban is looking at a bad cut on his arm, as Nancy says, what the hell happened to you? Urban says, that fucking Jade. She and her people nicked me out there. I'll be alright. Nancy looks upset and says, I told you we shouldn't have resorted to this life, Urban. I told you that this type of shit would happen to us. Urban raises his voice and says, well, this is what we had to do. Crops failed, Nancy. We can't hunt anymore because those things come back and rip your goddamn face off. It's either this or I would watch my family die of starvation. Do you think I like living like this? I don't like it any more than you do. But Ragnar didn't want to help us when we needed it. And I had to make sure that we lived. I had to make sure that my family lived. Nancy looks at her dead son's corpse and throws it in the fire, as we see a tear going down her face as she says, well, how'd that turn out for us? She gets up and walks away, as Urban stares into the fire with a look of sadness. We see it's starting to rain, as we see some thunder and lightning, as we see Morgan driving the boat, as Rob walks up to him and he says, "The waters are rough right now." Morgan says, should be alright. It won't take too much longer to get there. Rob says, "What's it like there?" "Gotta know where I'm bringing my daughter exactly to." Morgan says, "It's a good place, with good people. But if you want me to promise you that it's something safe, I'd be lying. Nobody or nowhere is safe, my good friend. But we certainly try our hardest to change that." Rob says, Yeah, we do." We see Mara sitting in one of the bedrooms in the boat as Rob walks in, and Mara says, "How's the kid?" Rob says, "She's fine. All things considered, I'm surprised. I knew my daughter was tough, but regardless, I was still scared." Mara says, "Yeah, I get it. One time when I was little, we lost our home. Burned down by horrible people. My mom died, and I got separated from my dad for a while, and I didn't know what to do. But I had people that helped me along the way. Even when things got bleak, even though we may not have gotten off on the best start, Rob Johnson, I am truly grateful that we crossed paths." Rob taps her on the shoulder and says, "Me too. So, what's the deal with these new guys? You seem to know them decently well, yet you all don't live together. It would seem that sticking together would be the best solution, wouldn't it?" Mara says, "It's complicated. And what happened a long time ago. So, let's just get there and give that daughter of yours a roof over her head. After what she went through, she could use one." We see Ryder and Holly standing outside of the boat as we see the rain is starting to calm down. But then we hear a loud bang. Ryder and Holly run inside in a panic, and Holly says, "Oh my god, everyone okay?" Rob and Mara run out, and Rob says, "What the hell happened?" Jade says, "Dad?" Rob says, "We're okay." Morgan then notices the boat is slowing down, and he says, "What the hell is going on?" Rob says, "Oh no, fuck." Morgan says, "Stay calm, everyone. I can fix this." The engine sometimes overheats on this old piece of shit. Something's caught in the motherfucker. "And it wouldn't be the first time, huh, Ryder?" Ryder says, "Okay, look, that was a long time ago. I didn't know what I was driving into back then, and you said that I had this. And then we ended up stranded on that island, and that crazy bearded bastard had to come over there and save our asses." Mara says, Okay, break it up. How long is this gonna take?" Morgan says, "Well, for one thing, I gotta see what's going on under there. I gotta go under the boat so I can find the source. It'll just take a few minutes, but the waters are bad due to this storm, so I suggest we hang our hats here for the night." Jade says, "In the middle of nowhere?" Morgan says, "You got a better idea?" We see Morgan in a suit as he then jumps into the water and swims down under. Rob says, "He's one brave son of a bitch." We see Morgan goes under the boat as we then see there's blood and guts stuck all in the boat as Morgan sees a deadhead got killed underwater. As he looks very confused, as he wonders how this happened, he then sees a reanimated shark is coming towards him. As he looks scared, he tries swimming away quickly. As we see, this shark is going straight for him. Morgan manages to swim up as he yells, "Help! Help!" Rob and the others see this reanimated shark as Rob says, "Oh no, Jade, get the rope now!" They throw the rope down for him as they all try to pull him up. As we see everyone pulling the rope as Morgan starts getting lifted up. But then the shark pulls him under the water as we see the shark bites his head off as it kills Morgan, as we see Holly and the others look devastated. And as Rob sees the blood in the water, as we focus on the bloody rope, as they pull it back up. The next day, we see them still stranded in the middle of nowhere, as we see Holly is crying, as Mara walks up to her and says, "I'm so sorry, Holly." Holly says, I shouldn't have let him go down there. It should have been me, not him. He didn't deserve this." Mara says, "Hey, you can't do that to yourself, okay? He made the choice, and he did it to help us get there. And we will get there, damn it, we will." Holly says, "I just don't know anymore." Mara says, "I do. Come on." Mara then goes down to show her an emergency raft that is stored in the boat. Holly says, "How'd you know that was there?" Mara says, "Every boat has one. Besides, Morgan was always known for Plan B." We then see Rob, Jade, Mara, Ryder, and Holly as they get in the big raft. As they sail off, we see the sky is clearing as they are approaching a big island. Rob says, "Hey, you see that?" Holly wipes her tears and looks back at Rob and says, "We're home." We see someone standing in front of a campfire, as we see two swords next to a log. As we see it's a woman, as we hear the sound of something coming from the forest, as she says, "If you're alive, I let you live. If you're dead, you can kindly fuck off now, please." Oh, right. You don't know how to do such a thing. My bad. She picks up her two swords and kills two deadheads. Then she sees a sign that says, "Blackberry Ranch, next right." She looks at it and says, "Well, looks like it's time to poke a bear or two." We see a seaweed-covered deadhead as Ryder then plows through it on the raft. As we see, they arrive on the island. As they all get off, and Jade says, "Wow, ocean waters. I haven't seen that since my mom took me when I was little." Rob says, "It's so peaceful out here." We see two men show up. One has a bow and the other has a sickle, and one of them says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, who the hell are these people, Holly?" Rob says, "Well, it was peaceful." He pulls out his weapon, and Holly says, "Dawson, put your weapons down. These are friends of the road." Dawson says, "Mara? Ryder? Damn, I never thought I'd see you guys again. I thought we parted ways for a good reason. At least that's what we agreed to with Mrs. West." The other guy says, "Where's Morgan?" Holly has blood on her hands and says, "He's gone." Ryder says, "He died getting here." Dawson looks sad, and he says, "Well, what the hell are we going to tell Valhazer?" Holly says, "I'll talk to her." Dawson says, "She's not here." Holly says, "Well, where the hell is she?" Dawson says, "Out looking for you. We all thought you died after you didn't come home that night." Holly says, We got attacked by some bad people out there. So did Mara and Ryder. This here is Rob Johnson and his daughter Jade. They were attacked by these people too. We were hoping you could take them in at least for the time being." Dawson says, "Well, it's not my call, but if you trust these guys, I'm sure Val will see the light here too." Holly says, "All right, let's get you guys settled." Back at Blackberry Ranch, we see Urban, Nancy, Nate, and Lisa doing some yard work as we see this woman walks up to the gates as she lets herself in, as Urban and his family look on edge, as we see a few of the workers come out of the ranch house as she walks up to them, and Nancy says, "And who are you? You mind stating your business before you just walk into our land?" The woman says, "Oh, well, it wasn't guarded. People don't have land anymore, ma'am. The world has belonged to the dead for decades, in case you hadn't heard. Now, I'm not here to talk about your beautiful property, which, might I add, is lovely. I'm looking for two of my friends, and their names are Morgan and Holly. Those names ring a bell to any of you?" Urban says, "Don't know anybody with those names." The woman says, "You sure?" Urban says, positive. The woman says, and what's your name? Urban says, I'm Urban. What's yours? The woman says, I'm Val Hazer. Now let me tell you something, Urban. My mother always told me that I was a good artist, so on my way over here, I figured I'd draw you a sketch of my friends. Take a good look. Now, do those people look familiar to you? She hands it to them, and Urban kinda looks on edge. And Val Hazer looks at him, dead in the eyes, and says, wow, do you always do that with your cheekbones when you lie? Some of Urban's fighters surround her, and she says, oh my god, whatever happened to honest communication around here? My friend's tracks led me to this area, and I'm starting to understand why. She then knocks 4 of the men down that try to attack her as she cuts them up a bit and leaves them bleeding on the ground, and Urban draws his weapon as she then starts walking away, and she says, well, Mr. Urban, consider that a friendly warning. Although if I find my friends' bodies anywhere around here, this will escalate. She leaves the ranch, and Urban looks pissed and says, son of a bitch. Back at the island, we see Rob and the others walking up a huge hill, as they then see a huge castle built in stone, and Rob and Jade both look blown away, as Rob says, what is this place? Dawson says, back in the late 2010s, this place was created to film a movie before everything went down. Sadly, it never saw the light of day because the movie couldn't be finished due to the end of the world happening. So our parents built this place up, and now the next generation will get to have a place just like this too. Jade says, wow, that's impressive. We see Rob and Jade getting a tour of the place as they smile and wave to a few people, as Holly says, follow me. You both are going to get your own place, which is one of my favorite views of the sea, and Rob says, you okay? Holly says, yeah, I'm okay. She keeps moving, and Rob can see that Morgan's death is hitting her. Back at Blackberry Ranch, we see Urban walking up to Cody as he says, where the hell have you been? Jesus. Well, you suck at your job. Cody says, what happened? Urban says, this samurai bitch came in and hurt some of us. She was looking for some dipshits and we had to force her out. Cody says, she say her name? Urban says, yeah, some Vale something, I don't know. Look, track her down, kill her, okay, please, before any more shit goes down. Cody says, you got it. He starts walking away, as he then looks at Urban and says, you know, maybe think about cannibalism next time, dickhead. Urban looks frustrated because his ranch is starting to turn ugly. Back at the island, we see Holly takes them to the new place, as Rob says, wow. Jade says, oh my god, this is beautiful. Rob says, yeah, it is. Holly, you sure this is alright? I mean, we don't want to be burdens. Holly says, no, don't mention it. Besides, any friend of Mara and Ryder's are friends of mine. Rob says, well, it's much appreciated. Holly says, you know, you should come to the arena tonight. We have some entertainment that we like to dish out by the end of every week. You know, to keep people entertained. You should come watch. Rob says, shoot, I'm down. Jade says, yeah, let's do it. Back with Val Hazer. We see her walking through the woods. As she's walking through, she stops. As she says, you know, it's pretty hard to sneak up behind me when you walk like a drunken dipshit. I'm gonna keep walking. She keeps walking. As she then spots Cody and 4 men in front of her, she then says, this couldn't be what it was, huh? Fair enough. She throws 2 knives and kills 2 of them instantly. Cody and the 2 others charge at her as she then slices up the 2 other men, as we then see some of their guts spill out, as she then pushes Cody down to the ground and she is about to kill him. Then she looks at him dead in the eyes and says, nah, too easy. Besides, a good hostage sounds just fine by me. We see big lights coming on as we see a huge arena of people, as we see Rob and Jade walking into the audience, taking their seats. As we see Mara calls them over and she says, "Guys, come on over here." They go sit with her and Holly, as Rob says, "Damn, big crowd around here. This happens here every week?" Holly says, "Pretty much. Something people forget is that there's more to this world than just getting by. So, we have a different idea around here. People need entertainment, so we provide it." Rob says, "I used to be a singer. Seeing this, I honestly forgot how much I missed it." Mara says, "Well, shit. We gotta see you up there sometime." We then see an announcer comes out and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to meet your stars." We see two guys come out of the crowd as they all cheer for them. They both give each other a cocky look as the instructor says, "All right, gentlemen, are we ready? Are we ready? Let's go." We see these two fighting each other back and forth as Rob says, "Damn, you're right. This is entertainment. And I'm here for this shit." Back with Val Hazer. Cody spits up some blood and he says, "You get entertainment out of this, lady? Or are you just trying to cover up some old scars from your past through violence?" Val Hazer says, "Shut up, asshole. I've now killed 334 people in my entire lifetime. And I can say that every single one of them, I would do it all over again. Now I'm taking you back to the island where you're going to be giving us all the answers we need." Cody says, "Let me ask you something. If I'm really about to die, at least tell me who's about to do it. How the hell do you fight like that? How the hell do you take all of us down like that?" Val Hazer says, "I had a sensei. A damn good one, too. And you know, he taught me something I think you'll find very interesting. Never let your hostage break free." Flashback to 2026. We see a younger Vel when she was younger. As we hear her narrating, "I was in a community growing up named Kingstonville. Things were so much more simpler back then. My parents were still alive. We had parties all the time. And me and my best friend Rose were being trained at a very young age how to fight, how to defend ourselves. Our sensei was named Miles. He is one smart son of a bitch. He taught us everything from martial arts to sword fighting and so much more. I've been doing this all my life. And every person that has dared to challenge me was put 6 feet under because Miles told me what not killing your enemy does to you. It consumes you, and it wears you down." We see Miles training a bunch of people as we then see them all sword training. We see a young Val Hazer and Rose training together as he walks up to them and he says, "Good job, girls. But Natalie, I'm going to need you to give it a little bit more, okay? You seem a little bit stiff." As we reveal her real name is Natalie, Miles says, "I'll tell you what. Why don't we go ahead and do a practice run together? Oh, and Rose, find Tom for me, please. I smell dog shit in the yard and I know it's that little mutt." Rose says, "Yes, sensei." Miles says, "Anyway, pick up your weapon, kid. Let's try it." Natalie picks it up and says, "Okay." Miles says, "Now maybe stand up a little bit more straight, okay? Now I promise you, you're gonna get the hang of this in no time." Natalie says, "Okay." They both train together as we see a montage of a few minutes going by. Miles blocks her and he says, "Now there's the spirit. Come on, let's run it again." Natalie puts her sword down and says, "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this, master. I mean, hell, you were able to block every one of my shots." Miles says, Don't take it personally. I'm not going to make it easy on you, because I want you to be able to learn how to defend yourself properly. And you're picking it up step by step already." Miles sees Rose walking up with two guys. One of them is Dave Miller. Miles says, "Alright, just give me 2 minutes, okay?" Miles goes over to them and he says, "Well, look who it is. You finally decided to show up, huh?" The bearded guy says, "Damn. Samurai tits, what the fuck is up your poop hole today?" Miles says, "Tom, did your dog take a shit in my yard?" Tom says, no, but you seem mad. Miles says, I am mad, Tom, because he took a shit in my backyard and I'm trying to teach a class here. Tom says, I didn't let him do that. I've been at Manland all night. I don't even like shit. Shit's gay. Miles says, oh yeah, like that gay-ass bar of yours? Look, clean it up, all right? I'm trying to work here. Tom looks at Dave, and Dave says, oh, no, fuck no. Why am I always getting the raw end of the deal? Tom says, because you suck at Twister? You know the rules. Come on, pick it up. Dave looks at Miles and he says, you know how when they say it's been a pleasure? It hasn't. They walk away and Miles says, sorry, Natalie, let's run it again. Natalie says, thank you for being so patient with me, Sensei. Miles says, well, it's always good to have a sensei that believes in you. Also, that's nice to you. Otherwise, you'd probably kill them. Natalie says, are you sure I can do this? Miles says, I promise you, kid. When I'm through with you, you're going to be a force of nature out there in that world. And the number one thing, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this either, you may think you're safe behind these walls that you see surrounding yourself every day, but there is a completely different world waiting for you out there, kid. And I hope you don't ever have to experience it like I did. But if you do, make sure you're prepared. Always make sure your bad guys are down. Never take your enemy's word, and never, and I mean ever, let your hostage free. As they start training again, as we see the sun going down. Currently, Vel looks at Cody and says, a wise man, my sensei. Now I sure hope you're ready to do some walking. Make it count because it'll be the last time you do so. We see her getting into a little boat as she tosses Cody in, and Cody says, Where the hell are you taking me to? Velhazer says, home for us, hell for you. And as they sail off into the distance, Vale has a smile on her face and says, thank you, Sensei. We see Blackberry Ranch as we zoom into the barn, as we see a woman tied down to a table, as she's got a gag in her mouth, as she is trying to escape. As we see the barn door opens, we see Urban walks in as he puts his jacket up on a hook and walks over and grabs a knife. And the woman says, Please don't kill me. Please. Whatever I did to upset you, whatever I did to you, I'm so fucking sorry. Urban says, oh, don't worry, I accept your apology. And while we're at it, I'd like to thank you. The woman looks scared and confused and says, For what? Urban says, well, for feeding what's left of my family. As he slits her throat like a pig, as she dies, as we zoom out and we hear him cutting limbs off, as we see blood on the table, it then transitions to meat on a plate. As we see Urban, Nancy, and Lisa eating at the table, as we see a few empty chairs left at the table, as we see no one is talking, as Urban looks at them and says, well, there's plenty more where that came from. Back at the island, we see Jade is sleeping in her bed. As we see she is dreaming. As we see now, in her dream, she is tied down to the table in the barn. As we see a man in the shadows comes in with a knife. As now this time, she can't get out. As we see the man walks in and slits her throat. As we see her die with a look of fear in her eyes. She wakes up from it in a panic as we see a guard from outside running. As we hear, she's back! We see Velhazer walking into the entrance of the castle. As she walks in past her men, as she is bringing Cody in as a hostage. As we see the audience begins to clap for her. as they are clapping for their leader. As Jade looks out the window and she sees Cody covered in blood being brought in, as she then closes the curtains in fear. Rob is having a smoke as Dawson walks up to him and says, "Hey, Rob Johnson, right?" Rob says, "Yeah, and you're Dawson?" Dawson says, "Yeah, I'm Val Hazer's right hand. I would just like to let you know that she's back into town, and she would like your assistance." Rob says, "With what?" Dawson says, "Well, we found a member of that group that attacked you and Holly and Morgan out there on the road. And since you're neck deep into this already, especially with what happened to your daughter, Val says that she would like you to help questioning and get information out of this guy." Rob says, "I'm not sure torture's up my alley." Dawson says, "It's alright, good friend. Huh, I gotta be honest, torture ain't up my alley at all either, you know. Times are changing. But anyway, I'll be going now." Rob says, "Alright, Dawson," as he takes another puff of his smoke. We see Jade is shaking as she is laying awake, as Rob walks in and says, "Oh, hey, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't wake you." Jade says, "No, it's fine. I was up anyway." Rob says, "Hey, you alright, sweetheart?" Jade says, "You asked me the other day if I was fine after the ranch, and I thought I was, but the truth is, it's really messing with my head." Rob sits next to her and says, Hey, it's alright. I'm sorry, baby. I tried my best to come as fast as I could." Jade says, "I know." Rob says, "Jade, I need you to tell me, alright? What exactly did they do to you?" Jade is shaking, and Rob says, "Hey, it's me. You can tell me." Jade says, They took me that night after we went out on that hunt. They kept me tied to a tree, and for a few nights straight I just sat there, not knowing whether or not they were going to chop me up into pieces. Then one night, I saw the opportunity, so I ran. I thought I was getting away, but then the ranch found me. They brought me in, and they acted like everything was normal. But I knew something wasn't right. I knew it, Dad. And when I discovered the truth, they tied me up in a barn and forced me onto a chopping table. They were going to cut me into pieces. And I fought and I ran and I didn't even think about it because it was all just such a rush until now. And it's now really messing with my head." Rob says, "They did that to you?" Jade says, "Yeah." Rob says, "Okay, look, I promise you, if it's one promise I can make you, this will be settled and justice will be served for you and for everyone else that suffered, and for the ones that didn't get to live as a result of their crimes." Rob holds his daughter tight as he looks pissed, as he has now seen her in pain. We see Cody in a dungeon as Mara, Ryder, Holly, Dawson, and a few others are standing behind Val Hazer as she says, "Well, I think someone's ready to do some talking." "Yep, I think so." Cody says, "You're evil. You're sick." Val says, you're a cannibal, torturing and trying to kill my people. You really think I'm just gonna sit here and play devil's advocate?" Now, from what I'm hearing, all you wear are these masks to blend in, and you're also located at a ranch, or to be more specific, Blackberry Ranch. Now, whoever the fuck came up with that name should be probably tested for retardation, okay? But anyway, let's get to it. She gets ready to question him as Rob then walks in and says, "Got room for one more?" Vale turns around as she looks at him and says, "Rob Johnson. Well, couldn't have come soon enough. You're just the man I've been looking for." Rob says, "May I?" Vale says, "Be my guest." Rob pulls out a knife and says, "So you're cannibals? Huh, pretty self-explanatory. Although you just got those lost souls at the ranch and beyond?" Cody says, "Fuck you." Rob says, "Wrong answer." He stabs him once as Cody screams out in pain, and Rob says, "All right, again, your people. How many are you?" Cody laughs and says, "You all have no idea what bear you just poked. Hell, I don't know any of you." He laughs and says, "But I know you, Rob Johnson. You know, our leader wasn't sure if you were still alive. But now we know." Very impressive. Rob looks pissed and says, "Who the fuck is your leader?" Cody says, "Oh, Ragnar will never get given up. He's our Lord and Savior. It's gonna take a lot more than just killing me to get the information you want." Vale says, "Don't let him get to you. He's just trying to get in your head." Rob looks a bit nervous and says, "Well, how the hell do we know? How many of you are there?" Cody says, "Not many of us now. Especially after the stadium stunt you pulled the other day after we came after your daughter. And by the way, how's she doing?" Rob says, "None of your business." "All right, Vale, if you got something to say, just go ahead and say it, all right? I think I'll strangle him if I keep going." Vale says, "Okay, understandable. Good job, Rob. We're almost finished here. So we know Blackberry Ranch, yup, got through that. How many people would you say you have in total?" Cody says, "Just over 30 now." Vale says, "We can handle that." Cody is in pain from the stabbing and says, "Can you just please fucking kill me already?" Vale says, "Let's see. Everyone good? We good? You good? Okay, cool." She slits his throat and says, "Favor granted." As he bleeds out and dies, as everyone looks upset, but Ryder then has a small smile on his face. We see Nancy and Lisa with a few skull hunters in the woods as they see blood on the ground, and Lisa says, "Mom, over here." Nancy walks over as she sees blood and weapons on the ground. As she sees, it's Cody's. As she looks paranoid and says, "It's that woman. I knew she wouldn't have let him go. Fuck." Lisa says, "Hey, it's okay. We're gonna get them back. But we gotta call Ragnar, and we gotta call him now. Mom, we need assistance here." Nancy says, "We gotta get back." They get back in their horse and buggy as we focus on the blood on the ground. We see Valhazer walking up to her people in a huge meeting room as she says, "That boy there claimed he has 30 men. Do I believe that? Fuck no. But we do know where they are, and they don't know where we are, and that's good for us. We have a serious advantage now. Although the thing is, with all her people dying, they got killed, Rob and the others, now Cody disappearing, they're stupid, sure. But are they so stupid to not know we're coming? Nah. But that's alright, because we have the courage, we have perseverance, and definitely the strength. And as the great Lincoln West did so long ago, he gave his life for a great cause, so that we all could have a family. So that we could all have a life, damn it. And even though our family may not be as one anymore, we will never forget the groundwork that he laid down for us. Am I right?" Dawson says, "We've come up against the worst of the worst. And this will not be our stopping point. You will not be scared, and you will follow Valhazer to the end." Valhazer says, good spirit, but let's not force them to feel something that they're not, okay? Are we feeling scared?" Some of her people says, "Yes." And she says, "That's right, as you should. We're all human at the end of the day. Being scared just shows us that we're the good guys here. Although cannibalism, I don't care the motive." As we see Urban feeding his family, as Vale says, "I don't care if some don't want this life." We see Nancy crying as she looks worried, and as we see Vale says, "And even if there is more of them than he says there is out there, we've beaten so many already. What's one more? Now are you ready to kill in the name of the West family? The crowd cheers as Vale looks at Rob and the others and says, "We roll out tonight." Later that night, we see Rob getting packed up as Jade says, "So tonight we're going in, killing them all, and then what?" Rob says, "Well, after that it'll be over. You and me can go back to my cabin just like the old days." Jade doesn't say anything, and Rob says, "What?" Jade says, "You know, I think if this was a week ago, I probably would have said, yeah, let's do that. But now, I'm starting to see how horrible the world is outside of these communities, Dad. And how good it is to have people have our backs, just like this place." Rob says, "Sweetheart, I always have your back. And we've done fine on our own for so long." Jade says, "Dad, don't you think what happened with those skull people is a sign that, I don't know, maybe making it on our own just doesn't have to be the only way? Just think about it at least." Rob nods and she says, "Okay, we're gonna need to be ready for tonight for the..." Rob says, "Wait, I can't have you out there." Jade puts armor on and says, "Dad." Rob says, "No, I just got you back. I can't face the thought of..." Jade says, "Hey, Dad, you remember when you first saved me? You taught me how to fight, and no matter how hard it was, I kept fighting, and I kept going because you said eventually it'll be useful to you. And eventually it'll make a difference. Well, I'm making a difference now. And I'm helping you settle this, not just for us, but for the people here. I have to do something." Rob says, "All right, I'm sorry." He hugs her and says, "When did you start growing up, huh?" Jade says, "All right, so we're doing this?" Rob says, Yeah, we are." We see everyone getting in the boats as they all look battle ready, as several boats of people with Rob, Jade, Mara, Ryder, Holly, Vale, Dawson, and some others all sail off to go attack. We see them making it to the other side as we see them getting off, as Rob says, "You know about what I did before?" Vale says, "I know what you've done for us, and that's why I brought you with me. You're a force of nature, Mr. Johnson." We see them walking down train tracks as Jade sees an old sign on the ground, covered in vines, as she asks, "What the hell is this? Wait, what the hell is this? Fuck, I can't make out the rest." Mara says, "It's best you don't know. Come on." We then see them go through the woods as they keep moving. We then see several skull hunters at the top of a mountain holding bow and arrows as we see them all light their arrows on fire as they load them. Rob says, "You hear that?" Vale looks up and sees arrows firing down at all of them as Vale says, "Everyone, scatter now!" We see arrows being fired over the trees as we see several of Vale's men getting killed. As we see Vale tries to run away with some of her people, as she sees everyone running away. Dawson pulls her away and says, "Vale, we gotta get the hell out of here." Vale then sees an arrow goes through Dawson's face as his face is lit on fire as he burns and dies right in front of her. As we see Rob gets Jade and runs, as they take cover, we see Mara, Ryder, and Holly running in the other direction. As we see one of the trees catches on fire. As Vale sees blood everywhere. As we see several of her people are dead and more on fire. As she has no other choice but to run away. Back at Blackberry Ranch, Urban walks up to his men and says, "You get them?" One of his guys says, "We got a lot of them, boss." although I think we missed a few. Urban says, all right, you go. Find what remains, and you do not come back until you kill every last fucking one of them. That's an order. The guy says, Urban, sir, maybe we should get Ragnar down here to help us. Urban gets up in his face and says, fuck Ragnar. We take care of our own, no matter the cost. We see Rob and Jade running through the woods, out of breath, as she says, we gotta turn back. Rob says, we don't know if any of them are alive. He sees shadows from far and signals her to get behind the tree as the two skull hunters just pass them by. But then, Rob and Jade look at each other and they both sneak up behind one of them and stab one of them each from behind, as Jade says, good thinking, Dad. Let's keep moving. Rob just looks at his daughter with a horrified look on his face as he realizes she's not a kid anymore. But then, we see a group of people come out of the woods on horseback and point weapons towards them as Rob and Jade look horrified and put their hands up in fear. We see Valhazer walking through the woods. As we see, she looks tired and terrified. As we see a big tower in front of her. As we hear something coming from the woods. And as she pulls out her swords. Then from behind her, 3 skull hunters come out from behind her and knock her down to the ground. As she says, well, there you are. Shit, I thought you gave up by now. The man says, by Urban's command, you all die tonight. Though you'll still be deemed useful to us. The other guy says, yeah, I bet we could get a few good meals out of her. The other man says, I bet we could. A sword goes through his neck as we then see it was her, as she kicks the other 2 guys back and gets up and stands in a fighting position and says, come on, you low-life dick suckers. Let's do this. The 2 guys actually look nervous now. As they run towards her, she takes a few swipes at one of them as he manages to slice her up in the face a bit, as she then drives her sword through him, and as his guts spill out, she then goes up to the last guy, as he pulls out a sword too, as they fight each other all the way up this tower, up the stairs, as she is saying, you eat, kill, and don't think twice. Only the worst human beings cower that bad. The guy fights back and is saying, we had no other choice. It's either this or we would have starved to death. You know, not everyone is as lucky as you with the perfect home and the perfect resources. Some people actually have to survive to live. They make it to the top of the tower as they fight back and forth, as she does a backflip and goes behind him and stabs him in the gut as the blood comes out of his mouth as he falls, and as she stands over him and says, now how's that for surviving? She throws him over the edge and says, well, I guess you don't have to survive anymore. Huh. We then see more people on horseback showing up to the tower as Vale sees them and looks relieved and says, damn, Mrs. West. Fuck. Just in time. We see Mara, Holly, and Ryder walking through the woods. As we see Mara's leg is bleeding, as Ryder says, hey, we need to stop. Mara says, no, I can keep moving, I'm fine. Ryder says, no, we're stopping. They sit by a log as Mara lifts her leg up, as we see it's bleeding very badly, and Ryder says, well, you were definitely hit. Although, we'll have to get that checked up. Mara says, no, we need to keep moving. They're coming. We then see a big group of people on horseback as we see Vel, Rob, and Jade come out of the group as Mara and the others put their weapons down. Mara says, oh my god, are you guys okay? Vel says, I am. Thanks to her. Hey, by the way, thanks for saving us back there. We see the leader walks up to them as we see a woman with a half sword and half axe weapon covered in blood as she says, well, a mother's instinct is always right. I knew something was wrong when you guys didn't come back. Ryder looks at this woman and says, "Mom?" She laughs and says, "Oh, now you're happy to see me, huh?" Ryder says, "Thanks for coming to get us." Val says, "So Alara, you happen to see any more of those masked freaks on your travels?" Alara says, "Well, I saw what remained of our horses back there." "What the hell happened?" Mara says, "Well, after that night, me and Ryder went to go make our delivery. Our convoy got attacked by these freaks. Everyone died. It was so quick. But I made sure Ryder was safe." Ryder says, "Keeping you safe, you mean?" Mara says, "Anyway, we were trying to get answers, but we found Rob and his daughter instead. He had gotten separated from her, then we helped Rob get her back. Rob and Jade have been a huge help." Val says, "You know, I can vouch for that. Rob is cool as fuck." Alara says, "Well, look, as long as we're out here, these freaks are going to continue to be a problem for us. I hear you all know where they're set up." Val says, "I sure do." Alara grabs an RPG and says, "Well, as one once said before, this is survival of the fittest, and only the strong survive." We see Nancy barges into the house as she sees Urban just sitting calmly, and she says, "Did you send Cody out there?" Urban says, "Who?" Nancy says, "Cody, Urban! We found several of our men dead on the road, and that was the group that he left with." Urban says, "Well, he knew the risk." Nancy says, "The risk, huh? And what is the risk?" She then pulls out a knife and says, "I'm finished with you. You are not getting the only child I have left killed over this, my fucking daughter." Urban says, "Our daughter. And you're not going anywhere. We're a family." Nancy says, "We're a cult. I've spent years, Christ, decades, trying to believe that you were doing this all for us, but it wasn't. It was never for us. You're just a controlling prick, and that's all you've ever been." Urban says, "Hey, you're not going. I'm not letting you go." She punches him and says, "Get your fucking hands off of me." We hear a huge explosion from outside as they see the garage is blown to pieces. We see Mara and Ryder busting the door down as Urban and Nancy start getting shot at by Mara's handmade nail gun. Nancy throws a knife back at them and misses. Mara says, "I got these two. Go!" Ryder goes through the house as he caps two other guys coming down the stairs. As we see, a lantern falls to the floor as fire starts to spread. We see Jade and Alara with a few other men as Alara says, "It's on. We move in." We see Rob, Holly, and Vale standing with a big group on horseback, as we see a big group of skull hunters across the field, as Vale says, 30 people, my fucking ass cheek. Rob says, "We stand in our ground." We then see the skull hunters run towards them in a crowd, as Vale says, "On my mark, everyone, and march!" We see both groups running towards each other. As they clash, we see people getting killed on both sides. Horses getting killed, several skull hunters, as Rob kills two of them, as he then ducks a swing from another one, as Vale kills one in front of him, as we see Holly gets knocked down by two, as she gets stabbed, as we see her go down. Back in the house, we see Mara looking for Nancy as she reloads her nail gun and says, "You're all big talk, but when in a gunfight, where the fuck is that fire, huh?" Nancy kicks her in the face as Mara's gun goes flying across the room. As Nancy starts punching her in the face over and over again, we then see Urban goes upstairs and locks himself in one of the rooms as he then sees the window and decides to jump out before the house burns. As we see, it's the same window Jade jumped out of before. We see Rob covered in blood as we see they're surrounded by dead bodies. As we see only he, an injured Holly, Vale, and a few other men made it out. We see Urban running away towards the barn as he goes inside and locks himself in. We hear behind him, "There's not a lot of places to hide around here." We see Jade and Alara coming out of the shadows as Urban tries to run out As Alara throws a knife, as Alara says, "Oh, this has been a long time coming, Urban. You have killed far too many people over the years." Jade says, "You took me away from my father, just for one fucking hot meal." We see Nancy beating up Mara as we see she's trying to get closer and closer to the nail gun next to her. As she reaches closer and closer, as she keeps taking hits, she gets the nail gun and sticks it to Nancy's throat and fires nail after nail into her neck as the blood sprays everywhere all over the floor. As Mara then gets up, covered in blood, and says, "Fucking housewife bitch." We see Ryder kills 2 more guys as he then sees blood all over the walls. And then he sees blood on his fingers and licks one of his fingers and says, fresh. He then hears something from a closet as he opens it and finds Lisa hiding in the closet looking terrified. As he says, "Oh, it's all right, little girl. You can come out." She starts walking out ever so slowly, and he says, "Come on, that's it. Yeah, you're all right. You're all right. There you go. Now, did you really think I was going to leave you out?" He slices her head off with a machete and says, "Well, that is mission accomplished." We see Jade says, "It's over, Urban. All the people you've hurt, everything you stood for is burning." Alara says, "What do you think we should do with him?" Jade looks angry and says, "Put him on the chopping table." Rob, Holly, and Vale see Ryder and Mara come out of the house covered in blood. As we see, they are all drenched, and Mara says, "Is it over?" They hear screams coming from the barn as they all start walking towards it. We see Urban tied to the table as Rob opens the barn door and sees what his daughter is doing. And Jade says, "Fuck. All right, Dad, fine. I won't do it. But he deserves to suffer more than anybody else." And Rob looks sad to see his daughter and him reach this point. But he says, "I'll hold him down and you turn the saw on." Jade nods as everyone stands there looking pretty freaked out, as everyone stands at the barn door as they watch Rob and Jade tag team chop Urban up into pieces as he screams out and dies a painful death. We see blood everywhere as they stop the saw, and Rob says, "Now feast on that, motherfucker." Vale looks horrified and says, "What the fuck have we become?" Ryder looks at her and says, "Well, winners." Flashback. We see Rob and Dave as they're in Rob's old house. As we see Rob walks up to Dave and says, "So where are you heading to after you take down this lunatic?" Dave says, "I don't know. But this is something I can't live with until he's dead." Rob says, "Nah, I get it. Maybe, and I know it ain't my place, but don't let revenge consume you, alright, man? I can tell you're a good guy, and I'd hate to see revenge get you killed or worse. You could come out a different person." Dave looks nervous and says, "I won't. Although you're right. My dad was a soldier. Had many tours in Afghanistan, and he always taught me growing up. It was the number one thing that kept his head in the game. Was that getting revenge was one thing, but the best revenge is to never be like your enemy." I never really knew what he meant. Although now I think I do. Rob says, "Sometimes people consume you. Hell, sometimes they control who you are." Currently, we see the sun coming up as we see what's left of Blackberry Ranch, as we see the door is wide open to the main house, as we see most of it is just burned down to nothing, as we see someone walking up to the ranch wearing a skull mask and chains with a long black jacket, as he has a wolf on a chain, as the wolf is sniffing around trying to find evidence, as this man with his wolf walks up with his 40 men, as he looks at Nancy's dead corpse and says, "Merciless death for merciless family. If that's not karma, gentlemen, I don't know what is. Check the ranch. Whoever did this kind of act are the kind of people I want to meet." We see Rob, Jade, Ryder, Mara, Holly, Vel, and Alara, along with a few other of her people, are walking a trail. As we see, they all look zoned out after what happened, and Rob says, "We need to get back to the island and update everyone." Alara says, "Yeah, me and my people should get back home to our people as well. Update them on everything. Importantly, bring Ryder and Mara back safe." Vel says, "Of course, it's understandable. Look, thank you, just for coming, for helping out. You really didn't have to do any of that. I'm sorry we dragged you into this." Alara says, "Oh no, it's no problem. Look, after seeing you guys again after all this time, it's brought back a lot of memories for me. Something I honestly miss." Vel says, "Me too. Till we meet again." Ryder and Mara are hugging all of them, as Mara says to Rob and Jade, "Good luck, you two. Thanks for being a rock star, Rob." And yes, I mean that literally. "You should play a show for them one time." Rob says, "I think I'll do that." As they leave and go their separate ways. Later on, we see Rob, Jade, Vel, and Holly walking through the woods, as Jade says, "Dad?" Rob says, "Yeah." Jade says, "What we did back there, killing them like that, what does that make us? Are we really better than them?" Rob says, "Of course we are. What they did was inhumane, and what we did was necessary. I hope you don't doubt that." Jade says, "I don't. I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm starting to drift further and further away from who I once was." Rob says, "Maybe we are. Maybe that's all part of getting older in this screwed up world. Though no matter what comes next for us here, don't ever lose yourself because your enemy drives you mad. A friend of mine once said something. The best revenge is to never be like your enemy." We then see a skull hunter in the woods holding a torch as Rob and the others pull out their weapons, and Rob sees them from far and says, "It's just one. Maybe a straggler. We can take him out." Vale sees two others and looks nervous. Holly sees three more and Jade says, "They're trying to block us off." They run away as we see the skull hunters going after them. We see Mara, Ryder, and Alara, as we see some of her soldiers are with them, as they're walking through the woods, and Mara says to Ryder, "You think we got them all?" Ryder says, "I think so. I mean, they really seem pretty damn stupid, so I don't think it's anything else than that." Mara says, "We should find a place to hunker down for the time being." We see an old trailer park in the distance, as Alara says, "You know what, that's a good idea. We'll stay there for the night, hit the road by morning." We see Mara on guard as she's having a smoke, but then she hears something coming from down the road. She hears something from far as she pulls out her nail gun, looking on edge. We hear a gun click behind her as we hear, "Evening, lady." We see a skull hunter behind her with a chainsaw as they say, "Keep your hands down, weapons on the ground. Go. 1, 2, 3. She drops them, and he says, "That's it. Now turn around." Mara slowly turns around as the man says, "Did you think this was going to be that simple?" Mara says, "So there is more of you." The man says, "Yeah, lucky for you. You're getting a free escort there." He then knocks her out. We see Rob and the others run through the woods as they go through an old skate park, but then we see dozens of skull hunters are already waiting for them. Rob and the others try to turn back, but even more come up behind them. Rob, Jade, Vel, and Holly are surrounded as one of the skull hunters walks up to Rob, as Rob says, All right. It's me you want, huh? Then just take me. The skull hunter knocks him to the ground as Rob falls, as we see his nose is bleeding, as he says, Please, I beg you, please to not, the skull hunter says. Fear not. Ragnar will treat you just like the star you are. Or at least, the star you were. Rob says, How the fuck does he know about me? Vel says, Okay, who the fuck is Ragnar? I've been hearing about him everywhere. It's finally time to rip the fucking band-aid off and light this fucking candle. The skull hunter says, Put your weapons on the ground. They all have no other choice, as Rob and the others all just stand there in the center of the skate park, as we see from a distance Mara and Ryder being brought down by the skull hunters, as we see a huge gash in Mara's head. As they look terrified, we see Ryder says, What the fuck did you do? Where the fuck is my mother? Where is she? They all get placed together as Rob whispers, Are you okay? Mara says, I'm okay. Ryder says, They won't be when I'm done with them. My dad died a fucked up death. Ain't no way I'm going through the same thing again. Vel says, Guys, stop. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I think we're seriously fucked here. Rob yells out, Whoever leads you people, can you at least walk out and talk to us before you kill us all? We hear chains as we see someone walking up with a wolf by their side. As we see this person is walking through the skull hunters, as the skull hunters all move aside and let them pass. As we see the leader walks up to Rob and says, And there he is, the first and best artist I ever managed, Rob Johnson. He takes his mask off as we see it's Rob's music manager, as Rob says, Mark Daniels? You're, Ragnar says, Alive? Yes. Through the thick and thin, I am alive. Vel says, Who the fuck is this? Wait, you know him? Ragnar says, Go on, tell the woman here. Tell them everything about me. Rob says, He was my music manager. He turned my life into shit. Ran me into the ground so long ago, and he made me agree to things that I didn't agree to. He took time away from my family, and he put me through hell to serve his needs. And eventually, when I didn't do it, he fucking put a hit out on me and tried to kill me. Ragnar says, Well, I see you haven't changed at all. That's not what happened, and I didn't do any of that. Rob says, Bullshit! Christ, even after you made an attempt on my life, my crew, my band all wanted to press charges on you. But I told them not to. But because I still cared about you, I fired you. I got rid of you for good. And I told you that if I ever saw your face around here again, that I would turn you in. Ragnar says, Well, I'm glad it didn't go down that way. Luckily, for us, there's no laws anymore. Hasn't been for a long time. I'm honestly glad. After all this time, I didn't think you were still alive. After the world fell, I actually went back to your prison cell to see if you were still there. Instead, I found an open cell and you weren't anywhere to be found. It was truly a sad day. But here we are, Rob Johnson in the flesh. After all these years, we finally get to work together again. Rob says, I will never work for you. And you're right. I shouldn't have fucking turned you in. Nah, I should have fucking killed you. Ragnar says, Go on, let out your anger. Okay, my fucking turn. You folks took out an entire settlement of my people. A lot of good fighters on that ranch, too. I saw what was left of it earlier today, and I must say I was impressed. I trained a lot of those men very well over the years, although those were more of my spare fighters, the ones that didn't have all the brains to do what needed doing. And I'll admit, the leader was an absolute asshat of a man that ate people, but I never cared about that shit. Christ, I think he'd sniff his own asshole if you asked him to. But regardless, they were my people at the end of the day, and I'm a bunch short now. Thanks to you. And I can't have that. Val says, well, we ain't your fucking fuck dolls either there, fucko, so what the fuck is it gonna be? Ragnar says, whoa, the mouth on this one now. I like her. I like her already. Now listen. For old time's sake, Rob Johnson, you and the rest of your friends here will all be together under one rule. Rob says, no fucking way. Ragnar says, yeah, I figured you would have said that, so let me make it a bit more simple like bread and butter. You either join us and become useful to what we are doing here and what we've been building for over 2 decades now, or I will kill every last one of you right here, right in the dead of night. Which sounds really fucking cruel, but luckily it's up to you, so it wouldn't be that cruel if you made the choice now, wouldn't it? Ryder says, where the fuck is my mother too? Ragnar says, don't worry. Lincolnville will be getting the download later tonight. He smirks and looks at Rob, and Rob says, what do you want us for? Why the fuck would you trust us anyway? Ragnar says, I don't. You'll have to earn that. We've had people that we've had join our organization for the last several years. They've tried, some have tried, or thought, or even crossed their minds to try to take me out. And guess what? Every last one of them we've made an example out of. And we'll do it again if we have to. Although I really don't want to have to kill my best artist now, don't I? I admittedly didn't ever really know if you were alive, till about a year ago when my men were out there on a hunt. And they saw you, with your beautiful daughter here, might I add, just strolling the streets. And my men spray painted a pretty nasty amount of words about you and your music around the area, because, well, I guess they didn't like your music. I mean, to each their own, but I personally disagree. I believed in you. But my men have a stick up their ass sometimes. You may have to forgive them, but that's another reason right there why I wanted you with me. My people need some great entertainment. And that's why I want you working for me. You're a phenomenal artist. Hell, I managed your music, for Christ's sake. Rob then remembers the spray paint that he saw in the past as we see a flashback to the old tunnel, as we see the very old graffiti painted on it. Rob Johnson is a killer. Take your songs out of your actions. He isn't who he says he is. Get your money back. Only a psychopath does what Rob Johnson does. Currently, Rob says, I killed that man to defend myself. Ragnar says, I know. So crazy how somebody can blame someone for something that they didn't do, huh? Meaning himself. Rob says, that's different. It ain't the same. Ragnar says, and it won't be after this. He walks up towards the group and pulls out a double-edged sword and says, but see, Rob, I don't think you understand even after all these years, after all the different ways I've explained it, you're still accusing me of attempted murder, and quite frankly, I'm hurt. So, what's about to happen? I want to make sure that you feel what I feel. Rob says, no. He stabs Jade in the gut as Jade falls to her knees and is starting to bleed out very badly. As all of the Skull Hunters hold our characters back, as Rob says, no, you destroyed my life, my daughter, my little girl. I brought her back. She gave me the only fucking purpose I had. I didn't have any purpose and she gave me a purpose. Please don't fucking do this. Don't take my purpose away again, please. Ragnar brings out his wolf and says, this here is Frost. And she looks very hungry. Oh, it has been a long day. I wouldn't want her to go hungry now. Rob says, please don't. Let her go, please. Jade says, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. Rob is crying as Jade says, don't let this consume you, Dad. Remember, the best revenge is to never be like your enemy.
One day I thought I'd see
As Ragnar says,
Well, I do have to keep my people fed.
as Frost is unchained and takes Jade and bites her face off. As we see, it devours Jade right in front of everyone. As we then see, everyone's broken. We see Frost licking her paws of blood. As Ragnar says,
Well, not so fast there. You'll get a tummy ache. Yeah, that's my girl. That's my girl.
Rob is covered in his daughter's blood as he whispers under his breath,
That's my girl. That's my girl. That's my girl. That's my girl. That's my girl.